I found her profile on an international dating site. I was looking further afield. No responses from the countless messages I'd sent to girls at home, both in my local area and across the whole country. I was getting nothing. The photos she had shared showed someone living in a world completely different from mine. The Philippines looked so vibrant and lush, and I could almost feel it. Her profile was simple, like mine. She was 28 and lived in a small town in Cebu, where she looked after her family. And like everyone else, she was looking for a better life. She didn't seem to want anything other than that, someone to settle down with. And that's exactly what I too was looking for. I sent her a message, thinking nothing more of it. I didn't think she would reply. What chance did I have? I was already 53. Her reply, though, was instantaneous. Not only that, it was enthusiastic, full of smiling emojis and little X's to indicate a kiss. That message I received was the first female attention I had since I was 47, and I liked it. We started chatting, every day without fail. The time difference meant late nights for me and early mornings for her, but it quickly became the highlight of my day and the thing I looked forward to the most. Her messages made me feel alive. She filled them with stories of what her plans were for the day. She talked about her dreams for the future and the struggles she was currently facing. She also asked me about my life. She was asking about me, and no one ever did that. She wanted to know about my life, my work, what it was like where I lived, and what my dreams were. I told her about my quiet life and my dream to meet someone, and I tried to present myself as a stable and dependable person. I felt like I was now living in this online world, and Michelle, that was her name, was living there with me, kind of like we were in a bubble. We moved from the dating site to a messaging app. That felt like a huge step, and then she agreed to video call with me. I felt like a kid going on his first date, and the first time she called me, seeing her face on my screen, it felt like a miracle. My heart was pounding fast. She was even more beautiful than her pictures indicated, and she called me sweetheart and my love on that first video call. I was excited to think that the feelings I was having for her were reciprocated. I spoke clumsily at first, too nervous and shy. I wanted to come across as being confident and suave, but I felt like I was failing. She didn't seem to mind, and not long after, I'm starting to settle down and feel comfortable enough to loosen up. As the day goes by, she started showing more about her family's difficulties. I felt awful to think about them having to struggle. There always seemed to be some bills that needed to be paid, a medical bill for her mother, repairs needed on their small house, and her younger siblings needed school supplies. I wish I would have known that these requests were part of the playbook, used similarly by other girls on their marks. These statements were woven into conversations about how much she loved me, and her dreams of us being together one day. They weren't demands, not explicitly. They were statements of fact about the challenging reality she faced on a daily basis. When I didn't offer up help, she'd follow up with a shy question. Can you possibly help me, my love? Just a little. The thought of her, this girl that I loved, and who loved me, struggling was hard to bear. I responded instinctively. I had a decent amount of savings, for me, and I wasn't extravagant, and I thought what was money compared to alleviating the worries of the girl who was falling in love with me. I started sending her money when she needed it. $50 here, $100 there, $300, followed by $500 and $1,000. Every time the money arrived, she would be grateful. She would go to collect it at a little shop in her town. And she was so thankful, and she renewed her talks of love for me and her hopes that one day we could build a life together. I felt proud I was helping her and making her life better. She talked about needing to finish her studies. She never had enough money to do that before, and she even talked about maybe opening a small business. It all sounded so exciting, but these future plans always seemed to require a bit of money. All her dreams involved needing money, and I was happy to provide. I envisaged a life with her, relaxing at home while she's out chasing her dreams that I was able to fund. I wasn't just sending her money. I felt like I was investing in the future life that we would have together, and it was exciting to think about. Over the next 6 months, the transfers I sent became routine. I would send money, often twice a month, and it started to add up. I didn't keep a precise tab of how much I sent in total, not wanting to think of it transactionally. It wasn't transactional, it was love, support, and building the foundation of both of our futures. But it impacted my savings considerably. I started to cut back elsewhere. I would buy less groceries. I cancelled some of my subscriptions, and I even postponed much-needed car repairs. But nothing felt like it mattered because it was for Michelle, and Michelle was my future. I had dreamed of going to visit her, and we talked about it constantly. She said she was excited and admitted to even being a bit nervous. I saw it as the culmination of our online romance. It would be the moment our two worlds would finally meet. I booked a 2-week trip. I used most of my remaining vacation days, and I sent off for a passport, the first time I ever had one. I sent her extra money for travel expenses so that she could meet me at the airport. I just felt it was right to contribute and help her out. When I thought about the fact I would be actually seeing her in person, I became a nervous wreck. The long flight was long, incredibly long, and tiring, having to change planes twice on the way. I rehearsed the conversations I would have with her in my head, and I couldn't stop thinking about our first embrace and what it would be like to actually see her for real in the flesh. She was there, at the airport, waiting for me. She had a sign with my name on it, but I knew it was her straight away. The airport was so busy. Thousands of people all checking into flights to destinations around the world, and thousands more having just landed. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her. She looked exactly like her photos, yet different. Smaller, perhaps, more guarded. I walked towards her with a huge smile on my face, my arms opening for the embrace I'd dreamed of. But it never came. She gave me a small, polite smile back, smiling that was all was expected of her. Not an indication of her feelings. She gave me a very quick kiss on the cheek, and then immediately she started talking about getting a taxi. Our meeting was nothing short of an anticlimax, but I was there with her, and I was excited to get to know her in person over the course of the next 2 weeks. The taxi ride to the hotel was chaotic. It didn't seem to be a long way, but the stop-start of the Manila traffic meant it took a long time to get there. She sat beside me, pointing out some of the landmarks, but she never held my hand like I was expecting her to. I thought we'd be close, like we were online, but this felt different. There were moments of silence that felt awkward, the exact opposite of the easy flow of conversation we had. I tried to start conversation, asking her how her trip was to meet me. I talked about my flight and how happy I was to be there. She answered politely, but only briefly and without any sense of enthusiasm. We arrived at the hotel. I was happy to be there and to be able to unload my luggage in the room. I handed them my passport and they gave me the key, and I smiled at Michelle, but that's when she asked where her key was. I'd booked us a room to share together, but she said she wanted a room of her own until we got to know each other. I thought we already knew each other, but that look on her face implied I needed to pay for another room for her, which I did, reluctantly. Luckily, it was the room next door, so we would be close. But my first hour or so in the Philippines was nothing short of an anticlimax. The next 2 weeks were very challenging. While we spent time together, going to malls and restaurants and other places, she never seemed to open up or relax. It was like she was just following the motions until I left. She never showed me any sense of excitement or happiness. I saw her world, and her financial realities were very different from my comfortable existence. That deepened my sympathy for her and made me understand why she needed my help so much. I hoped she would lighten up and turn back into the girl I was video calling for so long. I longed for that, but I didn't know if it would ever happen. The physical and emotional intimacy that I'd craved weren't there at all. We didn't hold hands naturally, and when she did hug me, it felt so forced and fake. There were no lingering glances that you make, no stolen kisses when no one was looking, and we continued to sleep in separate hotel rooms. I'm still having strong feelings for her, happy to be there on the one hand, but on the other, quite disappointed that she seems not to share the enthusiasm that I feel. I tried talking to her about it in a gentler way as I could. "Is everything okay, my love? You seem a little quiet." But she'd brush it off. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm just tired." And then she said it was different, telling me seeing me made it feel real. I desperately clung to that last explanation. Yes, it felt real, very real. Maybe the transition from online fantasy to real-world presence was awkward for her. It was awkward for me, but I was enjoying it. I don't know what her true feelings were. Maybe she was shy, or nervous, or just overwhelmed. I rationalized away the lack of affection, telling myself that this deep, true love didn't need a constant physical display. After all, she was here with me, and she was showing me her life. Surely that was love. I always convinced myself that any negative thoughts I had were just that, thoughts. I continued to spend freely during the trip. It felt like I was reinforcing my commitment, showing her that I was a good provider. I gave her money to send to her family, bought her new clothes and shoes and a phone, and I treated her to some very nice meals. I wanted her to know that I was there for her and would be there for her when she needed it. The day I left was so difficult. I cried, and tears welled in her eyes as we said goodbye at the airport. She hugged me so much tighter than she had for the entire trip and told me, "Come back soon, my love," she said. "I will miss you so much." That hug and those words were what I clung to on the plane journey home. They felt real and special. They also erased the awkwardness of the past 2 weeks. All I thought about now was the image of the crying girl who didn't want me to leave. She did love me after all, and I convinced myself that the struggles during the visit were just bumps in the road, and they could be overcome by the strength of our connection and the love we felt for each other. Returning to my quiet apartment was like stepping back into a world I didn't really want to be in anymore. The loneliness was amplified now. It was a stark contrast to where I had just been, and I started to live in my own mind in a way I never did before. Daydreaming and using my imagination to think about the things I wanted to be doing and the people I wanted to be with. Our online communication resumed. It felt like it had been intensified by the visit. She talked about how much she missed me and what a good time she had with me. She reiterated her love and her desire for our future together, and the requests for money continued to come in thick and fast. She framed them differently now. They were for our future. Money for her to finish a short course that would get her a better job. Money to help her family move to a slightly better house, which, she said, I would eventually share. Money for investments that would lead to a secure financial position for her. Each request felt more justified, and it felt connected to the potential life we could have together. I returned to my routine: work, quiet evenings, and sending her money. The amounts grew larger. It was a gradual progression: $500 for tuition, $1,000 for house repairs, several hundred for unexpected medical bills that seemed to strike her family with alarming frequency. I opened a spreadsheet for the first time, finally, just to track the transfers. The money grew steadily, crossing 5 figures, then creeping towards $15,000, $20,000 over the year that followed my first visit. My savings dwindled. I took on extra freelance work, ate even more simply, and postponed dental work I needed. Friends who occasionally checked in noted I seemed thinner and more preoccupied. I just talked vaguely about future plans, an investment I was making. I couldn't explain Michelle to them. How could I articulate this relationship that existed primarily through a screen powered by the hope of financial transfers? How could I articulate this relationship that existed primarily through a screen and through the financial transfers I sent? There were still video calls and sweet messages and declarations of love, but sometimes I'd see a flicker of something in her eye on the video. It was like she was distracted, and there was always a hesitation, and it often disconnected at odd times. Doubt would sometimes creep in, and did I just not understand things properly? Was I being foolish? But I always pushed the doubts away. She did love me, and she needed me, and we had a future to look forward to. The sheer amount I had invested, both emotionally and financially, made it almost impossible to consider the alternative. She was a part of my world now, whether I liked it or not. After more than a year of this routine, sending money, receiving nice love messages, and planning a future that I felt perpetually just out of reach, I decided I had to go back to the Philippines. Not just a visit this time, maybe I could stay for a bit longer, see if we could truly build a life there. I wanted to surprise her. I wanted to see her face when I showed up. I wanted it to be unannounced and unexpected, and I wanted to see her smile. It felt like a romantic gesture, and it would prove my devotion, and perhaps that would break through the last barrier that I'd felt during the last visit. I knew it was going to be hard. During all our conversations and her requests for money, she often sent pictures or showed me a video call of her town in Cebu, her house and where that was, and I thought I would have a good chance of finding her. I knew where she collected the money from that I sent, and as a last resort, I could send her some and wait for her to show up at the shop. I booked the flight, and I kept it a secret from her. I sent her a message saying I had a busy work schedule coming up, and I wouldn't be able to chat for as much as a couple of weeks. It felt very deceitful, but it was necessary for my surprise. I packed the bags, and it was exciting, and this would determine the course of the rest of my life and hers. The journey felt different this time. There wasn't as much anticipation, more like a knot of anxiety building in my stomach. When I landed in Manila, the familiar heat, it never feels normal. Going back to a hotel for a night before returning to the airport the following day to fly to Cebu. I was expecting a small little town, but what greeted me was anything but that. I went to a hotel and started to panic. How was I going to find her here? I brought up all her pictures, and it was impossible. My only hope was sending her money and meeting her when she arrived to collect it. I asked a taxi driver to take me to the town, only to be told it was 50 kilometers away. I didn't know what that meant. Was that 1 mile or 1,000 miles? But when he quoted the price, I guessed it was somewhere in between, and it was only $70, so I jumped in the taxi. As the taxi navigated the busy streets, my heart was hammering against my ribs. The scenery became more rural and rustic. What would her reaction be? Would it be joy or shock? And would she even be there? We arrived, and I paid the driver, and he left, and it was only a small town, not bustling like where we came from. I found a hotel and got a room, and I sent her a message saying I'd sent her $250 that she could collect. I'll be going back offline, and I will speak later. Then I closed the laptop. I walked to the street and wondered how to find the shop. I started asking people, and before long I was directed to where it was. I sent her money online that she could pick up in cash, a very famous company that facilitates those transfers. That was a blessing, the only thing I could use to find her. I took a deep breath when I saw it. It was next to a bank and opposite from a small restaurant, so I went in there and I waited some more. 4 hours later, I see a girl that resembles her walking into the shop. I quickly pay the bill and stand up and cross the street. She walked out 10 minutes later with an easy smile on her face. She looked up, and the look on her face changed from happiness to shock and what seemed like horror. I went in to hug her, saying surprise, but she pushed me away. I asked her how she was, but it seemed like there was nowhere she'd rather less be than right there. A man walked over. I had noticed him sitting on a motorbike parked just down the street. He looked visibly angry and called out to me, "Don't touch my wife." She was stood there frozen. The man's expression shifted from anger to surprise and confusion. "Who is this, Michelle?" he asked. His voice was firm, and it was laced with Tagalog I didn't understand. Michelle was still frozen, her eyes darting between me and him. The colour in her face completely drained. Before anyone said anything, I spoke. I came to surprise you." The grand romantic gesture shattering right in front of my eyes. The man looked at me, and then back at Michelle, his eyebrows raised in question. She finally spoke, her voice trembling, saying that he is my friend from online. Before he had a chance to speak, I blurted out, "A friend? After all the my love and sweetheart and all the money I sent you?" The man's gaze sharpened as he looked at me, as though he was assessing the situation. He said something to Michelle in Tagalog, his tone low and serious. She responded quickly and defensively. I couldn't understand the words, but I understood the dynamic. This was her and her husband, and in what world had I just found myself in? I repeated it again. "A friend?" My voice was starting to shake. "Michelle, we'd been together for 2 years. You call me your love, and I've sent you." I had to stop myself. The money. It suddenly felt obscene to mention it in front of him, in front of both of them. Did he not know that she'd been to collect my money just now? The man looked away from my face, looking distraught, to Michelle's, who was looking terrified and guilty. He said a few more sharp words to her, and she flinched. Then he turned to me. His English was broken, with a heavy accent, but the meaning was brutally clear. "You are the one?" He gestured vaguely, then pointed between himself and Maria. "She is my wife." He had just said it again, and I couldn't unhear it. Everything clicked into place. The guardedness during the first visit, the separate hotel rooms, and the lack of intimacy, the constant need for money, the carefully curated online persona, it all was false. It wasn't shyness or cultural difference, it was a lie. And it was a long lie, a 2-year elaborate lie, and it felt cruel. I looked at Michelle. Her eyes were pleading. They were sort of filled with a mixture of shame and fear. Fear of me and of him, and of this entire fragile deception. "You have a husband?" I whispered. The sound barely left my lips, and she didn't answer it directly. The tears were welling in her eyes, and she just looked away. The man stepped slightly in front of her, like a barrier. He just said, "Go." His voice was firm. "She is my wife. Go now." My mind reeled. I couldn't believe the betrayal. It was absolute, and it was devastating. All the plans, the hope, the sacrifice, and the vast sums of money, it was all built on nothing, on a huge foundation of lies. There felt like nothing left to say, no explanation she could offer, no apologies that could mend this. The sheer scale of the deception was breathtaking. Love, future, it was just a transaction. I was the mark, and she had played me perfectly. I took a step back. My legs felt weak, and I looked at her one last time, trying to reconcile the woman I saw, pale, tearful, and just standing behind her husband. That radiant, loving face I had spent countless hours talking to on my screen, I couldn't do it anymore. They were two different people. "I need to go," I mumbled, and I turned away blindly. I turned around and walked away as quickly as I could. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away from her and from him, and from the shattered dreams. I walked back to the hotel room and sat on the edge of the bed, and I just stared into nothing. The sadness I had felt after that first visit felt gentle compared to this. I pulled out my phone. Her picture was still there, on my screen. Her last messages. I looked at all of them, and the words just started to turn hollow. It almost felt like they were mocking me. I scrolled through our chat history, the I love yous and future plans, interspersed with the requests for money, for her mother, school, the house. Each dollar represented a lie. The spreadsheet I decided to open it, and the total stared back at me. It wasn't just a lot, it was everything I had. It was more than $20,000, and it was all gone, and it was spent on a lie. Money I had earned through the years of quiet work, that I'd saved for my own future, for retirement and security, it was gone. Just like that. As I sat there, the realization started to kick in. What was I going to do now? I knew it was over between me and Michelle, and there was no point me even being in the Philippines. I didn't stay the night in that hotel. I got transport back to the main town in Cebu, and I got a hotel there. I cried almost all the way back, and when I got there, I opened up the laptop and hoped there would be a message from Michelle, maybe explaining everything off as being a big misunderstanding. But there wasn't. She'd blocked me. I just stayed in the room all day and night, and for the next 3 days, I didn't go anywhere or do anything, or even eat. Trying to think back to the messages, was there anything to indicate that she was lying? There didn't seem to be. It all seemed real, but it wasn't. When I left the hotel for the first time in days, the sun hit me. It was bright out, and I looked around at the strange surroundings. It still had an awful feeling in the pit of my stomach. I wanted Michelle. I knew it was over, and I resigned myself to that. And when I went for a walk, I felt a calm come over me. At least I've been released from this money-sending nightmare. It was all meant to be part of our life together, our future together. That's how she always sold it. But it wasn't true. At least moving forwards, all the money I had could be spent on me. I looked around, and there were hundreds, if not thousands of girls that looked like Michelle. All beautiful, petite, and each of them a different person with their own dreams and hopes. Perhaps it would have been better meeting someone in the Philippines. I wouldn't have done the same things or made the same mistakes. The following day, I flew back to Manila. I changed my flight and flew home, back to my apartment. And I'm looking around my apartment, remembering the conversations I had with Michelle. I would have my laptop on my knee, sitting on the sofa, and we'd be chatting. My laptop on the kitchen table while I cooked. I remembered all the conversations, and it hurt. But I got over it. It took a long time, but I have healed. But it was a devastating life experience. Over $20,000 gone. I won't see it again. But it's not just the money. It's the thought that I will never find the love that I crave. What do I have now? What do I have to do? If only I knew.